All right, so this is my dear friend Julie Griffin, and we've known each other for, well, we won't say how many years, but since before husbands and before babies.
Before husbands and babies.
Yeah, and so I've seen Julie through all stages of life, dating, marriage, kids, and me, although not as much dating because I met you through my husband. And we each have 4 kids that are stair-stepped with each other, ranging from 7 to
7 months.
7 months. So 8 kids, and when we vacation together, or when we eat lunch together, it's insane. But recently, I'll let Julie tell a little bit more of her story, but recently she had her 4th child, who's 7 months old, who was a bit of a surprise to everybody. And
Which is our surprise blessing.
A surprise blessing. But she came with some difficulties, and so I'll let Julie kind of share just a little bit about like how you felt, where you were at when you found out you were pregnant, and then like emotionally what that was like for you.
When I was pregnant?
Yeah.
So she was a surprise blessing. And I always say that she was definitely God's plan for our family, but not our plan for our family at the time. We found out I was pregnant the beginning of a year that I had a lot of big plans for traveling, for my business, for our family, for weaning my son who had just turned 1. Golly, it's hard to go back to remember what that was like. But the shock was also, truthfully, a little bit of dread or feeling very out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are planners. You're a planner.
I'm a planner.
And I think what I recall was this isn't possible. This is just not happening. Yeah. This can't be.
Yeah.
I know for sure this isn't possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, but there was no denying it. No. I mean, once you find out.
I used the pregnancy test to play a practical joke on my husband, so you were for sure pregnant.
Yeah. It sure was. Yeah. And it was a hard pregnancy too.
Yeah.
It was a really hard pregnancy.
Yeah. And I wonder, do you feel like maybe you were a little bit not yourself during that pregnancy?
It's hard to say. All 4 of my pregnancies were very different.
Yeah.
I have, my children are at this time 6, 4, 2, and an infant. So I was only pregnant, within a 6-year span. Yeah. So it's not like it was a decade later and I was that much older. But all 4 of my pregnancies were very different. But it's hard to say if it was that I was different or just that our circumstances were different.
Yeah.
And having a 1-year-old and morning sickness is very different than having a 2-year-old and having morning sickness. Or having a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and having morning sickness is very different than having a day job and having morning sickness. Yes. Or, no kids yet or something. So it's really hard to say if it was I was different or just my circumstances were different.
Yeah, yeah. So then little one came and we were all super excited until we went to hold her and she screamed bloody murder at all of us, including Julie. She was rough.
Yeah, she had pretty intense colic.
Yeah.
Not pretty intense. It was, we didn't even know what color her eyes were for about a month because if she was awake, she was screaming.
Yeah.
And she came 5 weeks early.
Mm-hmm.
She was amazingly healthy for coming as early as she did. We were home within 48 hours. She never took formula. She breastfed great. Her oxygen levels were great. Her glucose was great. All these things that they had told me when I went into labor at 35 weeks, or I was just shy of 35 weeks. They told me that all these challenges would probably happen, and then they didn't. So I think we were mentally prepared for a longer hospital stay. We were mentally prepared for being under the care of medical professionals, and then they said, no, she's fine, take her home. And I think that's when, like, I felt like I got, like,
hit you in the face. Yeah.
blindsided by the reality of my life.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, she was, she cried all the time. She had all kinds of tummy issues, and this is not a video about colic or baby's tummy issues, but
I think it's important what that adds to your mental state.
Yeah. And the constant scavenger hunting for answers and for remedies to just get her to feel okay, and to be a mother, and to not be able to get your newborn or your infant to feel okay, and to know that they're hurting and that there's nothing you can do about it. On top of anything that I was going through or might have been going through chemically in my body, those two things compounding, I don't even know how we...
I would say it took, 3 or 4 months to get her to a place where she was easier.
4.5 months.
Yeah.
It was right... Yeah.
A little bit after Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was right around Christmas.
Yeah.
So 4 months.
So Julie and I are really close. We're at Julie's house right now. We play here often. They come to our house and play. Our kids love each other. We love each other. And I knew pretty early that you were not yourself. I sensed it. But I think you, as a mom of 4, you know there's the baby blues. There's that natural thing that happens. Exhaustion, and 4 kids. So you want to give it time. But at Christmas, I was really intentional with you. Right around that time of year, we both have holiday birthdays. So I kidnapped Julie to take her Christmas light looking at. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I think that's the first time I said, do you think maybe you have some postpartum stuff? I don't know if you remember.
I don't even remember. Just until just now, I'd forgotten that you came and picked us up in the golf cart.
In the golf cart, yeah.
Did I have her with me?
No, you had my baby on you.
I was holding Gigi.
Yeah.
That's right, your baby.
Yeah. So that was kind of
not screaming.
It was, my babies don't scream, thank God, because we would have less of them.
My babies didn't until this one. And that's another thing that this is my 4th child, and babies 1, 2, and 3. All babies have their challenges and strengths and personalities, but none of them had colic.
Yeah.
So it was all uncharted territory for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard. So as a friend from the outside looking in, I think some of the things that I noticed, and that I noticed with myself when I had postpartum with Brock, is huge withdrawal. And a lot of it is self-protection, because you feel like any excess is just going to be more of a drain and you can't handle it. At least that's how I felt. I also felt like I wasn't a very nice person, and so I didn't want to be around people. Like, I felt like I'm gonna be nasty, and so I might as well just not be around people. And I think I noticed that. I also just noticed that
The withdrawal,
big time
with
you. I think at one point you told me you hadn't even stepped out of your door for a week and a half.
Yeah, it's possible.
And so,
which at the time didn't seem weird,
right?
Because I was just
being a mom,
nursing, and trying to get her to stop crying, and with my 3 older kids, I joke now, but I was just kind of like a dispatcher for them, because I couldn't meet their needs. So we had neighbors, grandparents, family members, friends that were helping with my older kids, but I'm still their mom, so I'm the one that knows all the things. So I was just kind of like home doing the command central thing. So for me to like get out of a nightgown and have to leave the house didn't even seem like it made sense for me to do.
Right. And I think that's important. I think it's important to note that like your entire gauge of what's normal for you shifts.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't
entirely.
Yeah. So there was a gentle nudge at Christmas, and then I took you out for your birthday because you needed to get out.
Yeah. That was a fun night.
That was a fun night. We saw a really weird movie.
We saw a weird movie, but it was a fun night.
And then kind of things have just been going along this spring. We haven't seen you as much as we normally would, but it's hard. when you have 4 to coordinate nap times and all of that. So I think we're both understanding of that. But definitely, I think I was aware and started to just really be really intentional about my prayer for you.
Yeah.
And that there would be an opportunity for me
Yeah.
to talk to you honestly about what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to talk about kind of what you were going through January through April,
Sure.
Leading up into our conversation.
Sure. So in retrospect, I knew that things felt different after my 4th baby than it had my other 3. But I think I mostly attributed it to the challenges of having 4 kids just being insurmountably harder than having 3 kids. And some of that is probably true. 4 is more than 3. Mm-hmm. You know, it's math. But and her colic too. So to me, the circumstances of my life were just so hard that I just kind of accepted that the way I was feeling was just the way that I was going to be feeling forever about how it was to have 4 children, and the things that I say this, you know, people talk about postpartum depression, that the baby blues or whatnot, and it wasn't that for me. It was not baby blues for me. It was rage. It was, you call it like the fight or flee. Mm-hmm. Like I was either fighting or thinking about how can I get away from this. Mm-hmm. And it was never so bad that I was like gonna abandon my family or whatnot. And I think that's because I had a lot of support. I have a very supportive spouse and a very supportive grandparents and a very supportive community rallied around me. So I had a lot of help, but I was able to escape or flee in other ways, pouring myself into this or that had nothing to do with my family. And it kind of got to where it's really hard to say, but the only enjoyment of life that I was feeling was when I wasn't with my kids, I wasn't with my husband, I wasn't doing the mom thing. I was resentful. I was just so, I was in such a darkness, but to me, I think does adrenaline play in?
Well, oxytocin from after you had the baby.
I had no oxytocin after I had the baby. Yeah. Truth be told, I feel like I didn't because I read all the books. My 4th child, my first baby was a C-section. Yeah. Then I had a epidural VBAC, second epidural VBAC, and then my 4th was my very first completely unmedicated natural
VBAC.
Birth VBAC. Mm-hmm. And so I read all the natural birth books about, you know, the oxytocin release that you have when you have your baby, and it's like the baby comes out and then the oxytocin comes over and you're like, oh, my baby. And I didn't feel that at all. Yeah. I didn't feel that at all. Yeah. I was still so blind. Again, she came 5 weeks early and surprised us. I don't think you had
still fully accepted
I hadn't
be a mom of 4.
Processed any of it.
No nursery prepared. Yeah.
No, and we still don't even know where her, like what we're gonna do with the bedroom situation. Yeah. And she's 7 months old, and we finally set up a crib for her outside of our room because she was in a pack and play in our room for a while. But
so you don't feel like you had any oxytocin? You feel like
no,
as a general?
No, I didn't have any oxytocin, and I knew that my hormones were off. Yeah. I knew that my hormones were off because of a few things. Again, this is not my first baby, so yeah. I knew what my body does, and my cycle was different. My smell was different, mm-hmm. which I don't know if that's a thing. I've not researched it, but yeah. I will say my smell was I smelled different this time around. Yeah. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Yeah. But again, I just felt like that this was my new normal, and I just needed to accept my faith. And so I was kind of just leaning into, is that a kid? No. Sorry, thought one of my little kids was out of
Tiny
their bed.
footsteps.
I think that I was just running on adrenaline.
Yeah.
Like running, like I was just go, and just trying to manage it all and just trying to keep my head above water. But like I said, there was no enjoyment.
No happy hormones.
No happy hormones. And I didn't, I went from being able to having 3 kids before I was pregnant, and maybe a little bit in my pregnancy. It was chaos because having 3 kids is pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I've got 4 now, so like, badge of honor, but 3 is pretty, even 2 is chaotic.
Yeah.
Even 1 is chaotic, but I still enjoyed it, and I loved motherhood, and it was like, I still felt like a vocational calling to what I was doing. It was my ministry, and I really poured into it, and this time, I didn't feel that at all. I felt like I was a slave, and that was the term that I would use to my husband. I felt like I was a slave.
And I think that was one of the saddest things for me as a friend to watch, is because from day one, Julie and her husband were one of the first people to babysit our first son because they hadn't had a baby yet.
Yeah,
and
this was
they
7 years ago.
Yeah, they were looking forward to having kids, and when they had their first, they were just, enamored with her, and you loved motherhood and are probably one of the most intentional mothers that I know in terms of what you do with your children and how you pour into their lives. And so to have this flip of, I don't enjoy this, I don't even want to be here, was a red flag for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love kids, and I love my kids, but during this little season when it just came by storm, looking back, it's easy to just call it what it was, but in the time I was like, I just hate my life.
Yeah.
Like, this is my fate now, and I'm probably gonna hate my life forever, and this is just what I'm gonna have to do forever. And it was a real bummer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't blues. I would not use the term baby blues. It was resentment, it was bitterness, and it was like absolute rage. Uncontrollable, like hormonal rage, like adolescent type stuff.
Yeah.
I would get so angry about things that didn't need to be a big deal. Yeah. But I just couldn't even just
you're just totally in your limbic system, not even able to engage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So through that time, up until we had our conversation, 3 weeks ago now?
Yeah.
As we would interact, did you feel supported? Did you feel cared for? Did you feel understood?
Yeah, I think, and I knew that I was battling a little bit of, and at the time I probably would have labeled it more postpartum anxiety than postpartum depression, because I think the term depression has more of that like sadness or subdued or lethargic, or I don't know if those things are true, or I've never been diagnosed with depression outside of this season of my life, but for me that it was more anxiety, and I knew that I was having a hard time coping with the day-to-day of having 4 kids and still trying to run my house and leave my house and talk to other people, and people, like, the doorbell would ring and it was like I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want, like, something out of that wasn't like in system. I don't know, like anything out of system was a catastrophe. And so I knew that I was having a hard time, but again, I felt like this is just what it's like to have 4 kids. This is just like 4 is exponentially harder than 3.
Yeah.
And so I felt supported. Again, I have a very supportive husband.
Yeah.
The grandparents, our local grandparents were amazing, and we have an amazing community of support, and I think that's why I was able to hold on for so long without actually naming this dragon and saying, no, I'm actually not okay, I need help.
Yeah.
Like help, not like help with my kids, but like I need help.
Yeah.
And I also I'm a very strong person, and I'm not, I think a lot of moms of a lot of kids, you just have to be selfless.
Spend a lot of time sacrificing.
There's a lot of sacrifice involved with motherhood, and there should be.
Yeah.
That's just, part of the calling, but I think that was why I was able to not call it what it was for as long as I did.
Until 3 weeks ago.
Until about 3 weeks ago, I had a panic attack.
Late at night.
Mm-hmm. Late at night panic attack. Stupid panic attack. Should I go into what it was?
No.
Okay.
It was her body saying, pay attention to me. I told her that at the time. I said, this is your body telling you to pay attention to your feelings.
Totally unrelated to my family, to my marriage, to my household. Totally unrelated. Was a little bit of a poke, and launched me into a
full-blown panic attack.
And I've never had one before. Yeah. I knew what it was because I knew what they were, and I read about them, and I know people who have generalized anxiety disorder who have them regularly or what. So I knew what was happening, but it had never happened to me. Yeah. And I would say now that until you have a panic attack, you don't know what it's like to have.
It feels like you're dying.
Yeah. It kind of like until you give birth without drugs, you don't know what it feels like to give birth without drugs.
I'm going to do 17 hours with no epidural.
Yeah. So this is happening, and I'm laying in bed, and I knew it was happening, and I kind of tried to wake up my husband, but he didn't know what to do. He's not trained in how to talk somebody out of a panic attack. So I kind of did this is not about you, go back to bed, I'm calling Steffi. And I called Steffi, or I texted her, I think I said,
are you awake?
You up?
I'm like, what's going on? Sadly, I am still awake.
New phone, who dis? You up? No, I said, you up? And you said, yeah, and so I called her, and I said, I'm having a panic attack, and so she...
So, yeah, I mean, if anybody, I'll talk about that in the Insta stories probably, about how to bring somebody down from that. It's pretty easy. But I really felt from my perspective, this is kind of what I had been praying for, was this opportunity to say, you have postpartum depression. You are not okay. Mm-hmm. You need to pay attention to yourself. And so that's after we got you calmed down. That's basically what I said to you. Yeah. I don't know what you remember from that conversation.
No, I remember a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you said I've been just kind of praying for the right window to talk to you. Because you can't, when somebody is in go mode and fight or flee mode, you can't slow them down and say,
let's have an intervention.
Let's have a talk about I'm really worried about you. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I need to do this, or I just need to get this done, or I just need to get so and so to this, and I just need to make sure that this is clean, or no, I'm okay, but I just need to whatever. Yeah. So really there wasn't a time, and like I said, I wasn't completely oblivious to the fact that I was struggling. I just didn't think that I was struggling so bad that I needed something besides
practical help.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah.
Or help with the kids.
I think what I appreciated about Julie's response is that right away she goes, so what do I do? Do I need medicine? Mm-hmm. And I told her, I think for a period, if you're comfortable with it, it's a good idea to get you back to normal. Mm-hmm. Because I think anytime our lives feel unmanageable, if what we're doing isn't fixing it, we have options, right? We can get therapy, we can take medicine. But I think especially with postpartum, because it is chemical, it's not that you are feeling this way because of trauma. Right. I think it's important to consider medication. There's a lot of other things we talked about too. Mm-hmm. Exercise, being outdoors. Yeah. And so you did see a doctor.
I wasn't doing right because I didn't want to.
Yeah, you did, and that's the double bind of depression, right? Yeah. The things that fix it are the very things that you don't want to do. And I always say depression is this this thing inside of you that will eat you alive if you let it, and everything you do has to be to combat that. Mm-hmm. Because it will grow the more it wins. Every battle it wins, it grows. Yeah. So the battle of get out of bed. Absolutely.
Anxiety, because I do think that I know there's in a Venn diagram between depression and anxiety. There's probably a lot of shared in the middle. But I do think for me, a lot of it was postpartum anxiety. I would say even over postpartum depression. And I don't know. I'm not a medical professional. I don't know the difference between hormones and stuff, but
yeah. So if you from everything to like get out of bed in the morning, to put on your clothes, to shower, to take care of yourself, depression says no, you don't need to do that. You don't really want to do that. You just want to sit here. That's not going to get you anywhere. That'll make you more tired. And so every battle it wins, it grows and gets worse, and it's harder to overcome. But if you knock down those battles, it does get a little better. But in your case, I think even you feel that it was best to get some medical help.
Yeah. Once I had that panic attack, and logically considering what triggered the panic attack and the thoughts that were going through my head, it was very eye-opening. Like, this is not who I am. This is not how I respond to dumb things.
Yeah.
This is not an emotional place that I go.
Yeah.
And like you said, I do think, I'm not a professional like you are or anything, but I do think that there is a distinct difference between postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety than probably like a generalized anxiety disorder or regular depression. Regular depression. Forgive
Run
me.
of the mill.
and because of the hormones and chemicals that are going on in your body, and because this was my fourth baby, I'd done this before. So you would say like, oh, you've done this before, and I knew I felt different, but at the same time I was like, no, I've done this before. I don't get PPD.
Yeah.
Like some women who get PPD with their first, they just kind of know, like, they're prone to it. And but this was my fourth baby, and I'd never had it before.
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking like, oh, that's something that should be on my radar.
Right.
So yeah, as soon as I recognized it for what it was and that had the eye-opening experience, immediately it was like okay, well, like, gonna go talk to my doctor. Well, it wasn't like, okay, let's go talk to my doctor.
Two days,
but it was
there,
and that was also partly because of my husband.
Yeah.
I was like, first, I'm gonna talk to my husband about it. And second, it was like, oh, I should like research a little bit, or like I should probably maybe start, I don't know, taking some vitamins. And my husband said, well, if what you're telling me is true, you're gonna call your doctor right now and get an appointment today.
Yeah.
And that's what I did, and my husband went with me. And I was just really honest with, and I saw my OB, and I had asked you, should I go to my PCP, my primary care physician, or my OB? And you said it probably doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. No, I've had other people tell me that when they've gone to their OB after a certain period of time after baby comes, the OB won't see them. It's a really bad OB.
Yeah.
Because you could end up killing yourself or your baby. So to all of those OBs that are refusing to see their patients for that after this particular girl was 6 months. So your OB should see you. If they won't, get a new one. But your PCP can prescribe psychotropic drugs and can give you the right stuff.
But yeah, my OB, who I have a relationship with, I've been seeing him and
at least
all
4 times.
Yeah, at least 4 times. No, since right before I got married, I started seeing him, and no, he got me in that day, and I was able to be very honest with him, and he said, "Yeah, you got it pretty bad."
Yeah.
If you know him, he's like a very unassuming kind of character.
Yeah.
And so he just was listening and kind of like taking notes on his little tablet, and he goes, "Yeah, I'd say it's pretty bad."
Was that a relief?
Yeah, it was, to be validated by a professional who I trust and who knows me and who has seen me through all 4 of my pregnancies and my births and my postpartum care each time. Yeah. I sent him a Christmas card. He knows my family.
So you've been on medicine now for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
2.5. Yeah, well, and I should mention too, besides the medication, which is a very, very small dose, what I attribute to was the progesterone shot.
Yeah.
So he had me get a progesterone shot that day.
Yeah.
And within 12 hours,
You felt different.
I felt different.
That's fantastic.
Like maybe 18 hours, but like the next morning I woke up feeling different, and I've tried to reflect on how much of that was the progesterone, because it must have been because it was injected into my body and that's what it's supposed to do, and also how much of it was just the freedom of like, oh, this is out in the open too.
And I don't have to pretend I don't feel this way anymore, because I think a lot of the things that you felt really horrible about feeling, saying them and
all
not
those
being judged for
that are
them,
not socially acceptable to say out loud to people who don't know you and love you and know your heart.
Right.
But I remember that next day feeling like, for the first time, and this was 7 months, for the first time, like holding my baby and being like, oh,
I like her.
I bonded with her.
Yeah.
And it's the saddest thing, and if anyone's watching this, and the biggest takeaway that I would hope that somebody would take is like, if you don't feel that towards your baby, like that's your sign.
Yeah.
And for me, I was so overwhelmed with life that it was just like another
leech.
She was just another dependent.
Somebody taking.
She was just another dependent in my household. I had 3 dependents before, and I have 4 dependents now, and I was in charge of all of them, and I had to make sure everything went okay. But the emotional connection wasn't there, and that's why I say, like, when I gave birth to her, I did not have an oxytocin release. I didn't.
Yeah.
And even my doula at the time was like, well, sometimes it can take like an hour. I never had it.
Yeah.
I never felt like emotionally, chemically connected to her. And it's really sad, and it's really sad to say that out loud.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe somebody who studies colic can study if there's like there's a correlation between
they can tell that mommy's not feeling, because they can smell oxytocin.
They can I had none.
Yeah.
Like there was no oxytocin going on for me.
Yeah.
And she did like have some legitimate dietary issues, tummy issues too. But so that day when I held her, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I like you. Like, I like you. And I just remember like snuggling her and being like, oh right, this is what it's supposed to feel like to love your baby.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to even say that, and I hope nobody's judging me.
Hopefully
anybody watching this is not watching it in a place of
her,
judging.
You can go ahead and just click off right now.
But I'm sure that there are a lot of mothers who are in a place of, like I was, just thinking, well, this is just how it must feel this time. And I love my baby. Of course I love my baby. Like, that love is a decision that you make, and I truly believe that. And I made the choice every day to love her and to care for her and breastfeed her and cut 80 things out of my diet. Like, that's how hard I was loving my baby, but I didn't feel it.
Yeah.
And so if you're watching this and you're
not feeling it,
not feeling that connection, like, might be something chemical going on.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was literally within 18 hours of that shot.
That's fantastic. And the doctor had told you that might not work because it works better closer to birth.
Because it works better closer to birth. And also, I think because my fertility had already come back, meaning I had already had an ovulation and a menstrual cycle, actually 3. And that's been the case for me with all 4 of my postpartum experiences. My fertility comes back
really quick.
Real quick. And that's not
Hence
true.
The whoopsie daisy.
we don't use that word. She's our surprise blessing.
Surprise.
She's our surprise blessing. I do not like the term
whoopsie daisy,
oops, or mistake or anything, because I don't believe that any babies are mistakes. Yeah. My fertility comes back really quickly. So I what my doctor said is this might not work for you, but it definitely did. Mm-hmm. And then I started a medication, a very, very low dose.
Of an antidepressant.
Yeah.
Mood stabilizer.
Mood stable, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever those are. That's safe for breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Very, very low dose. And that was also at the recommendation of both my doctor and the pharmacist, saying, start low and go up slow if you need to.
Right. And I know we had talked a couple days ago about you changing the time you take that, because the side effect you had was not the one you were worried about happening.
I know.
But that it's making you tired.
Like
pregnancy tired.
Like pregnancy tired.
So have you started moving that later?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The pharmacist had recommended that I take it with breakfast because one of the side effects can be insomnia, which is like what every mother with an infant needs, is another reason not to sleep. So they said take it with breakfast just in case it makes you not sleepy. But I had the opposite. And after I researched it, I was like, oh, other people have had this side effect. But yeah, it was making me really tired. Like I could take a 3-hour nap right now, and it's only 10 a.m. So yeah, I've been gradually moving it an hour later every day until I'll eventually take it at night. But and I should add also that my doctor prescribed a few other things. He is a believer, so he actually had a pretty frank conversation with me about my prayer life, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And he prescribed me a bedtime. He told me you need to be in bed at this time every night. And he prescribed me a walk outside every day. He said you need to be going outside and getting 15 minutes of sunshine and fresh air, which sounds so okay. Like, okay, I need to go outside, but I wasn't.
It makes a really big difference.
Yeah. And I even still, I'm like, oh, I have to like do my go outside assignment. Like, and it helps with my job. I am outside a lot. And so that helped. Yeah. But I wasn't doing it outside of my job.
No.
So.
You weren't doing it as self-care.
I wasn't doing it as self-care. I was doing it as work, which I love my work, which I also think is another reason that I was able to go so long, because I do have a job that I absolutely love. So I was able to lean into that as opposed to having that be another source of stress or
draining,
resentment or drain or something. So yeah, bedtime, daily sunshine, prayer life. I feel like there's one more thing, which I'm obviously not doing. No, I think it was just those
one thing that I'm totally doing, but I can't remember what it is. I know too that you've talked to your family and the people that are close to you about what's going through. A little bit.
Some of them might watch this video and be like, "Oh, I had no idea." I do think that the people close to me are not stupid. And they probably suspected or knew and could see my struggle. I'm also a very private person, and I'm a very stubborn person. And I'm not a, I'm busy taking care of kids and busy running a house, and so it's just like not about me. No, I mean, I've shared enough, but I haven't given like a play-by-play. I'm not really like I'm going to call everybody I've told and give them a play-by-play. That you're
struggling. With postpartum. And my question is, or my curiosity is, what has been the response from people that you've told that to? Do you feel like they've like been like, oh, or that they've been like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that, or what can we do to help you?
Yeah, I feel like most of the people that I've told have been like, well, yeah.
So you're welcome to the party.
Yeah, we knew it. You didn't? No, not really. No, I haven't. I don't want to be somebody who like is broadcasting like, look at me and look at my struggle. Like my hope for sharing my story would be that it would help
another person get help,
another person who has the same struggle. Not that it would be something that I need to like talk about all the time.
Right.
So I haven't.
I guess I just wonder, has anybody reacted negatively in a way that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I think that's something that we're all afraid of, is that if you say, I have postpartum depression, people are going to think, oh, does she want to kill her kids? Is she going to drive into a lake with all her kids in the minivan type of a thing? You know what I mean?
No.
Which I think it's really important to say.
It's so common.
It's super common.
It's so common.
Yeah. And I think most people don't have that kind that you hear about on the news where moms are doing things to their kids.
Right. When it gets so bad.
Yeah. I think most of us feel alone, overwhelmed, exhausted,
disconnected.
Disconnected.
That's the biggest.
Disconnected. And I think the desire to engage with your kids is a big thing, or like we were talking about the bonding, but like that desire to be a part of the family is gone, and or the will to, the ability to.
It was an obligation, not a joy.
Yeah. So, anything else that you wanted to be sure you shared with everybody? That I haven't asked.
No, I do think that there are stigmas that people who don't know will have, even though I haven't encountered a lot of them. They do exist, but my experience has been, even in my, if I did a social media post where I alluded to it, people, women particularly, have come out of the woodwork to be supported.
Yeah.
So it is common. A lot of women have dealt with it. It is treatable. It is temporary.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this thinking, I might have this, that would be my only encouragement with that you would reach out to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, not everybody has a therapist for friends. It's close. But I think if
I've told some people, I'm like, one of my very best friends is a therapist. They're like, how'd you manage that? It's like, well, I used to play volleyball with her husband.
It wasn't arranged. It wasn't a prearranged thing.
Yeah.
I think it's important as a friend that for me, like, I tend to be very intentional with a few people and try to be as connected as possible to those people, so that when things like this happen, I can be a true support and to be very honest. And I think anybody who knows me knows I'm not a reactive person, and that when I say something to you, it's out of love, and that I'm not going to say something I don't know anything about. Yeah. And so I think just loving the people that you're friends with, and if you see someone that's struggling, making sure that it doesn't come off as accusatory, but hey, you are not yourself. I'm noticing that you were this way and now you're this way, and I'm just curious if you've thought about maybe a little bit of postpartum stuff. I think if you can inch your way in there, and maybe it's not one conversation, but a series of conversations that are not accusatory or judgmental, because she probably already feels like a failure. And if she's having the thoughts that Julie talks about having, or that a lot of women talk about having, they already feel pretty crummy about themselves as moms. So adding to that is not good.
Yeah. When somebody's feeling like their life is impossible, adding on top of it, there might be something wrong with you. Is a heavy. It's a big ask for somebody who's struggling in that way. So you have to be gentle and intentional and take time, like you did. Because if you had said to me in November or whenever, like, hey Julie, I think you might actually have postpartum depression, I would have been like, I think you're not my friend anymore, and we're not gonna have any more play dates. And
but instead I made sure I was around. I'd bring dinner occasion.
She made me muffins.
I did make you muffins.
She
brought by a rotisserie chicken and tiny
checking in. She was like a little elf. Checking in on me.
Therapy elf. It's a new service
elf
we provide. But I think too, the social stigma, if you have a family member that has depression and that creates a reaction on the inside for you, it can feel like you said something wrong with you. And postpartum depression isn't something wrong with you. It's a change in the chemicals in your brain, in your body, that's actually not allowing you to be you. And so kind of removing it and compartmentalizing it over here as something that's treatable, just like eczema or acne or anything else that chemicals in your body cause, rather than something that needs to be changed about who you are and your character, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's good.
So we're gonna
What she said.
What she said. So we're gonna be calling this new series. I'm gonna start doing a series of interviews, and we're gonna be calling it At the End of the Day, because this is something I say all the time. At the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
And my college girlfriends have encouraged me to do this, and so I think at the end of the day, I think the most powerful thing you can do in the life of any new mom is be present, and be aware, and be loving. And when there is something like this that comes up, I don't know if you know, I talked to your mom at the playground one day because she was concerned, and she said it.
Yeah.
And I said, she for sure does. I said,
Yeah.
you know, I'm trying to stay close.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to talk to people that aren't trustworthy, but making sure that you're connected in a way that could be meaningful for that person. And if you're a praying person, pray about an opportunity, because I feel like that was straight from God. Like, this has to be now.
Yeah.
We're going to fix this. So that's my at the end of the day. Be present, be loving.
Be gentle.
And be gentle. Yeah. Yeah.
Because all new moms struggle.
Even new moms for the fourth time.
Even not new moms.
Yep.
Even not new moms who don't have postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Motherhood is hard.
Motherhood is no joke.
Having a newborn is hard.
Yeah.
I see it in my job.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Which we don't even talk about that, but
yeah.
I see.
So I want to thank Julie for sharing, and for her husband hiding in the other room and her kids sleeping quietly. But if you have any questions, feel free to just leave a comment or PM me or anything like that. Thanks for listening.